So we have 5 of the 6 wild card games in the NFL playoffs and the wild card round completed. Um, I made a video about that earlier this week or a few days ago on Friday in the snow in my car. Um, I did make predictions for all the games. So far, I'm 4 out of 5. I picked 4 of the winners correctly of the 5 games that have happened, but we'll go into a video talking more about that later. I'm not bragging; those pretty low hanging fruit there. Those been a pretty easy one to predict so far. I picked pretty much all home teams except for the game tonight, which the home team won't really even be the home team. They'll be in a different stadium. I do have the Vikings winning tonight, but I had the home teams winning all the other 5, 4 of which I was right about. So we'll get into that in a moment or in another video. Today I want to talk about a subplot that I really kind of went into a rabbit hole down when going over this video. Everybody knows about Mike Tomlin, head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's only the third head person that's head coach of the Steelers since 1969 when they hired Chuck Noll. Chuck Noll's their coach till the late 80s, possibly into the 90s, I can't remember. Bill Cowher took over and coached for about 15 years, won a Super Bowl. Chuck Noll, of course, won 4 Super Bowls behind Terry Bradshaw and Franco Harris and Rocky Bleier. And me and Joe Green, Jack Lambert, Mel Blount, all those, but basically the whole Hall of Fame. Mike Webster, offensive lineman. And of course, Bill Cowher was known for playoff futility. But he did well. He did well, and he finally won a Super Bowl in 2005 and had a heck of a roster when he retired. And Mike Tomlin's had it for the last 17 years. And there's been a lot of videos about him out there. I didn't really want to kind of, pile onto that. I've always felt he was, overrated as a coach and definitely overprotected because of obvious issues. There's been major issues over the last few years that's mercifully becoming less of an issue. It's still an issue in the mainstream media, but the rest of us can finally feel free to talk about it. His race. I always felt that, he was overrated and overprotected. I didn't think he was as bad, or not bad, but I mean as overrated and as overprotected as he was. I didn't think he was, I thought he was still, a very solid, very, very good coach. And I guess I've changed my opinion about that after really researching them when I was talking about what they had to gain. Because I knew he'd been under fire, and like I said, I just assumed, that, they couldn't be, the media, the mainstream media, who I've never trusted, can't have it that wrong. I mean, there's got to at least be a kernel of truth in what they're saying, that he's one of the best in the league, and that his long streak of coaching the Steelers without a losing season. He's had a few 8-8 seasons, but a bunch of 9-8 seasons too. Can't be that wrong, but actually researching it, I have to say, I mean, I agree. This guy is overrated. Now, again, overrated does not mean bad. I mean, you can be like LeBron, for example, is overrated. In the GOAT conversation, he has no business in the GOAT conversation, but he's still an all-time great and a legend. But he's definitely overrated. But he's not bad. I'm not going to sit here and act like he sucks. Has he sucked the life out of the game? Well, yeah, but that's another story for another day. I think LeBron's overrated. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's bad at what he does. But Mike Tomlin is definitely very overrated. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's bad. I don't think he's a bad coach, but I mean, he's definitely a very, very middling coach. I want to kind of go over his history a little bit and just show you what we're talking about and just try to figure out how come this guy has never had his feet held to the fire at all when other coaches who have had, great seasons, winning seasons, championship seasons, people like, you look at what happened with what's going on with Mike McCarthy. He won a championship, ironically over Mike Tomlin in the Super Bowl, in Super Bowl 45 in Dallas, the 2010 season. He's not regarded very well as a coach at all. Nor should he be. I'm not saying that, he's being unfairly targeted, because he deserves everything he gets, in my opinion. But, he didn't get the protection. Andy Reid, you look at his time until he finally started winning Super Bowls with Patrick Mahomes, he never got the protection. And, I mean, he was working with, until he got Mahomes, he was working with some quarterbacks that, really weren't the best out there. Donovan McNabb was a very good quarterback. But, I mean, he would hyperventilate and sometimes even throw up in big time situations. He got way too nervous. He let the moment get to him, and the result was they never won a championship. It took them a long time to win one, and people were saying, why do they keep hiring this guy? You can't win a championship with him. Well, now he's won 3 of the last 5 and is working towards a possible three-peat, and everything's different. So, but Mike Tomlin has never ever had his feet held to the fire like that. But I can't help but wonder why. And then, of course, the answer always comes back to his race. Has been very, very protected. The mainstream media, which is another reason why you can see they're dying out. Their refusal to hold him to the fire, hold his feet to the fire, just shows you how blind they are to identity politics and the whole "if you're not white, you're always right" narrative that they like to run. And again, this is not showing any disrespect towards Mike Tomlin as a person. From all I've heard, he's a good guy. The players seem to really like playing for him, to the point where they will take advantage of some of his lackluster rules. But that's, again, you go into that all day, but it's just kind of want to put it in perspective as far as as far as what's happened in his 17 years. Now, I made this comment in the last video. I compared the last 13 seasons, not counting this one that just happened, which would be 14 seasons. I compared the 2011 to 2023 Steelers to the 2003 to 2015 Carolina Panthers. My Panthers, who are very much a middle of the road franchise, or were a middle of the road franchise that could occasionally rise up and compete with the best, until David Tepper bought us about 5 or 6 years ago, and now we're bottom feeders. Before he bought us, I made the comparison. I did make a mistake in that video. I'm pretty sure I said that in those 13 seasons from 2011 to 2023, they made the playoffs. I think I said 7 times. It was actually 8. It was 9 this year. But just again to kind of put this in perspective, we'll go with 14 seasons. So for the Steelers, we're going to compare their 14 seasons from 2011, the year after they lost their Mike Tomlin's second Super Bowl appearance, to the Panthers from 2002, which is John Fox's first year, taking over a 1-15 team the previous season, through 2015 when they made their second playoff appearance or Super Bowl appearance after John Fox had been fired, and the very underrated Ron Rivera took over. And like I said, during that time, even though we made 2 Super Bowls and lost them both, we were never what you'd call a model franchise, even though Jerry Richardson, the Big Cat, did a lot of really good things for us. For the Steelers in their 14 seasons from 2011 through this season that just happened, they have made the playoffs 9 times. And in that time, they've made 1 conference championship appearance. 6 times they've lost in the wild card, and 7 times they've been one and done. Because one year they went to the divisional round and lost. They made it to the divisional round 3 times in those 9 playoffs. They won once to go to the championship game where they lost, and they lost the other 2. One being a first round bye straight there that they lost. So that's 6 wild card losses, including pretty sure the last 6 playoff appearances, if I'm not mistaken. And like I said, 2 losses in the divisional round and 1 in the AFC Championship, and 0 Super Bowl appearances. You compare it to the Panthers from 2002 to 2015, their 14 seasons. They made the playoffs 6 times, never lost in the wild card round. They did have 3 one-and-dones, because 3 times they went straight to the divisional round and lost. That would be in 2008 and 2013. So twice. We were 3-0 in the. No, it was 3 times. Sorry, we were 3-3 in the divisional round, 3-0 in the wild card round, and we made the conference championship 3 times as opposed to once for the Steelers over their span. And in that time span, we made the Super Bowl twice and lost both times. We were 8-6 in the playoffs over that time period, where the Steelers, on the other hand, are 3-9. So over those 14 years respectively. So that kind of puts into perspective as just how bad the last 14 years. But overall, it's when you look at the whole picture of Mike Tomlin's time as the head coach, you really see just how middle of the road they've been. Because he inherited a team in 2007 that was just 1 year removed from their 2005 championship. Bill Cowher finally gotten over the hump and won it. He finally had a Hall of Fame quarterback to in his prime to be behind, even Roethlisberger wasn't even his prime yet in 2005. It was just his second year. He still had a ways to go. They finally won it, and he put together one heck of a team. Tomlin's first year, they went to the wild card round and lost at home to the Jaguars to David Garrard as a quarterback. Now, I always liked David Garrard. I thought he was a good quarterback. That's his only playoff win. So, starting to see a theme here. Now, 2008 was a very good playoff run for Mike Tomlin. Yes, he inherited a Super Bowl winning team, but still, not just anybody can do that and win a Super Bowl with it. Just because Barry Switzer could doesn't mean anybody can. He actually had a very good run to the Super Bowl and to the championship in 2008. They beat Phillip Rivers and the Chargers. They did beat their blood rivals, the Baltimore Ravens and Joe Flacco. Phillip Rivers is only 5-7 in the playoffs, but I mean, at the same time, he's been there a lot, so he has had a lot of experience. Joe Flacco is 10-6. He's a Super Bowl MVP. In the Super Bowl, they met up with Kurt Warner, another former Super Bowl MVP, in his third Super Bowl. He'd won one. He would lose this one to Mike Tomlin. He has a 9-4 record in the playoffs. So that was a very impressive one. Like I said, I'm not saying the guy was bad. And you can say, that was Bill Cowher's team or whatever. He still did the job. So I give him a lot of credit for that one. They didn't make it the next year, but in 2010 they made it. They made the playoffs again. They made it back to the Super Bowl. And again, they beat Joe Flacco again, 10-6 in the playoffs. So 2 of his 6 losses in the playoffs against his 10 wins, 2 of those losses were against Mike Tomlin and the Steelers. And he also beat that frisky team, Rex Ryan's New York Jets with Mark Sanchez. That 2-year run where they made it to 2 straight. AFC Championship games. They beat Tom Brady. They beat Peyton Manning at home or at their own place. The Jets were on the road when they beat them, and they went to Pittsburgh for the championship game in 2010 and lost. So, Mark Sanchez, I think, has a 4-2 record in the playoffs, and it was 4-2 in those 2 years. So, gotta give him a lot of credit there. But unfortunately, that's where the good times end. They played the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy in his only Super Bowl appearance, and he won. He's always kind of had a tendency to come up a little bit short in the biggest moments. He has had a lot of bad luck. There's been a lot of times where he's just not had the chance to get the ball back, and his defense give up a lot of points. But at the end of the day, that's his only championship was against Tomlin. So there's something to be said about that. Went back to the playoffs the next year, and they did lose. They had a better record than the Denver Broncos, but they went on the road and lost in overtime. But surely it was to a good quarterback, right? Oh, wait, that was Tim Tebow. Yeah, that Tim Tebow's one playoff win came against Mike Tomlin and the Steelers. The guy, I love Tebow to death, one of my favorite people, all the way wore his Christian faith on his sleeve, but the guy could not throw a football. That's all there was to it, and the Steelers managed to lose to him in his one playoff win. After they didn't make the playoffs the next 2 years, in 2014 they made it back, only to lose to their blood rivals, and finally Joe Flacco got a playoff win against the Steelers. And then 2015 was probably that wasn't quite their best year. This is a year they actually won a playoff game in that time period that I was talking about from 2011 to present. They did win in the wild card round against, I believe it was the Bengals, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken, it was at the Bengals, but their quarterback was A.J. McCarron. University of Alabama legend, never did anything in the pros. He has a career playoff record of 0-1, so that was his only playoff appearance, and Pittsburgh did win that one. The next week they went to Peyton Manning on his last leg. I would say his last legs. He had no legs. It was the same old Peyton Manning that we played in the Super Bowl and couldn't beat because Cam Newton, but that's another story for another day. We lost to him. And 2016 was probably their best one. They started off in the wild card round, won 2 playoff games before losing in the conference championship game. But if you look at their playoff run, they beat the Dolphins, quarterback by Matt Moore in the first round. Matt Moore is a Panthers legend. He took over at a time when we were looking really, really bad and actually gave a very good effort. Never took us to the playoffs, but for the Panthers standard, he was actually doing pretty good for us. So we always remember him, but his only playoff start was then, and he lost. And The next round they went to Kansas City. Now you have to realize from the '90s up until they got Patrick Mahomes, everybody went to Kansas City and won in the playoffs. Everybody, even Peyton Manning during his initial playoff struggles, went there and won. It wasn't until Patrick Mahomes took over that only people named Tom Brady and Joe Burrow did that. Could go into Arrowhead in the playoffs and win. But yeah, they went there and they beat a Chiefs team quarterback by Alex Smith in a very, very ugly, sluggish game by both teams. They made it to their only AFC Championship game since their Super Bowl loss. And they did lose to a team that plays up north in Foxborough. The quarterback by a guy that used to coach the Browns back in the '90s and is now the current head coach of the UNC Tar Heels. Go Heels! Belichick, I think is his name. I don't know whatever happened to him. And their quarterback was a guy by the name of Tom Brady, who, in all fairness, is known for having a little bit of playoff success. So that's kind of a high point for the post Super Bowl win, or post Super Bowl loss, Mike Tomlin era of the Steelers, because that was the start of a lot of losing in the playoffs. So that was 2016. The next year they go back to the wild card round, and they play Blake Bortles and the Jackson. No, actually, they went to the divisional round. Sorry, they had a bye to the divisional round, and the Jacksonville Jaguars of Blake Bortles as their quarterback came to town. Now, this was the Saxonville era. The Jackson was very, very good this year. They almost upset New England in New England the next week in the conference title game, who went on to have, in my opinion, Tom Brady's best Super Bowl appearance or performance when they lost to the Eagles in 2017. But that was quite a juggernaut they almost knocked off. So, but at the end of the day, Blake Bortles was 2-1. That was his only playoff run ever. He was 2-1, and one of his 2 wins was against Tomlin. They didn't make it the next 2 years. In 2020, the COVID year, they did make it back to the wild card where they got demolished by the Cleveland Browns and Baker Mayfield. Now, Baker Mayfield, I still think has a lot of life left in him. I think he's still going to have some really good playoff runs in the future. I know yesterday was pretty disappointing to see, but I think he's going to use that, like he's used all his other disappointments, to something better, as a springboard for something better. He just strikes me as that type, but Baker just lit them up. He's 2-3 in the playoffs after yesterday's loss. I think that's going to change over time, but at the end of the day, he lit them up pretty bad. Went back the next year and played the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, and yeah, they promptly got beaten up pretty good. And like I said, again, this is Mahomes. That was the year they would actually not make the Super Bowl. They lost to it was one of the only time in the last 5 years they didn't make the Super Bowl. They did make it in 2020 against Brady and the Bucks and lost. But he beat them up pretty good. Missed it in 2022. In 2023, they made it and lost to Josh Allen, who's a very good quarterback. I feel like I know the playoffs haven't been his best times, but he does usually make some noise in the playoffs, and he did that year against the Steelers. And this year, they went back and played Lamar Jackson, who was 2-4 in the playoffs despite all of his regular season success, and he now has 3 wins, one of which is against Mike Tomlin. So that just kind of shows you. I know it's a lot of numbers I just spit out and kind of rambled about, but at the end of the day, Mike Tomlin is definitely overrated, and how people have not held these stats up, and all they bring up is he has a winning record. He won a Super Bowl back during. I think the Obama administration just started, because I think that was the 2008 season. This will be February of 2009. So yeah, that was a long time ago. So why he's not had his feet held to the fire again, we know why. I mean, and that's a big reason why the mainstream media is just not trusted anymore and not taken seriously. Because I mean, if they're not going to hold his feet to the fire, if they're going to keep holding him up as untouchable and somebody you can't even talk bad about, that just shows you what a failure they are. And especially for an organization as proud of the Steelers, you have to have a different standard. As he always says, the standard is the standard. Well, his standard is not doing well in the playoffs. I mean, like I said, a good start. I'm not taking anything away from him. Those first 3 or 4 years, he did a very, very good job. Won a Super Bowl, made it to a second one. But at the end of the day, that was quite some time ago, and coaches that have done more have gotten let go for a lot less. So, the Steelers, organization, and I get it, that's kind of good stories. None of us like change. I don't like change. It's kind of cool seeing an organization know that since 1969, some 15 years before I was even born, they've had a total of 3 head coaches. It's nice to see them, not just, firing head coaches willy-nilly, because I don't think that's a good thing. But at the same time, I think Mike Tomlin's long since run his course, and the fact that he's been so untouchable to the media shows a lot. And hopefully now that wokeness seems to be ending, but of course the mainstream media is going to hang on to it forever. But there's going to be a lot of YouTube videos that I've watched, and they're still being made showing just how far out this guy really is, and just how middle of the pack he is as a coach. I mean, there are some franchises like us that would trade places with him in our present state. Yeah, of course. But, at the same time, we're not the Steelers. We don't have 6 Lombardi trophies in our cabinet. We have none. We have 2 Super Bowl appearances that we lost. So that's just my take on Mike Tomlin. I think he's definitely the most overrated and overprotected and overprivileged head coach in the league for sure, and in all sports other than Doc Rivers. So I can make a video on him too, but a lot of other people have too. This is kind of why I've kind of avoided this, but I just kind of wanted to put it in perspective that kind of made sense the way I'd seen it. And, I'm sure somebody's already done something like that, but hey, it's kind of just my way of seeing it, and So hope you enjoyed that. Thank you guys for watching, and if you agree, if you disagree, let me know in the comments, and I'll talk to you guys later.